Okay, this is week 7, out reading from the outline. The first thing that we're going to talk about is fillet. So I'm going to draw 2 polylines here, and the fillet button is right there in the ribbon. So you select that, and then it asks you for a radius. I typed in 0.25 for the radius. There we go. So that creates a fillet of 0.25, and you can fillet 2 objects that are not touching each other. And there is that. And with fillet, you can also do, so F on the keyboard is the fillet command. So I am just going to quickly go over multiple. So all multiple does is it allows you to do more than one fillet at once. Typically when you do a fillet, you fillet the corner and then it ends the command. Multiple allows you to do it multiple times. These other options, undo, pretty self-explanatory. Radius allows you to change the radius. And then trim, it will create the radius and then it'll trim the previous section. So you'll just be left with the curve and then yeah, so those other ones I can go over if you would like me to. So now the next thing that I'm going to do is chamfer. Chamfer, the same thing. They don't have, 2 objects don't have to be touching. Chamfer is a flat corner on an object. So distance 1 is horizontal, distance 2 is vertical. So distance 0.25, and I'll just hit enter to do 0.25 by 0.25. And that is the chamfer. And the 2 distances do not have to be equal. They can be different lengths if you choose, but it is not required. Next thing is blend. And chamfer, if you press the little down arrow, chamfer is the second option. And blend or blend curves. So if I were to draw an arc here, and blend curve just creates a smooth curve between 2 non-touching arcs, or 2 arcs. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is break. There are 2 different break options. One that I use all the time and one that I absolutely hate using. So just the regular break command is this button right here. and then you select the line, it'll break the line into two segments, line segments, but it breaks it at the point that you just selected on either side, and there's no real way to make it just separating the line at a specific point with that command. But there is break at point, which I use all the time. And what that did was create two separate line segments at the snap point that I selected. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to talk about is join, which is this button right here. So I have two separate polylines there. So I'm going to select join, select this line and that line, hit enter, and it is now one. It is one polyline, but they are two different segments that are connected or closed. And that is the join command. Next, we're going to talk about copy. So the copy command is right here in the command line, or it is CP on your keyboard, or I find it easier to do CO, which also does copy. So copy, you select your object, select your base point, and select, and you can do it as many as you want. And that is copy. The next thing we'll talk about is rotate. Rotate is right here in the ribbon. Same thing, you have to select your object, then it'll ask for a base point, and then you rotate it as you want. You could type in the number of degrees that you want it rotated, or rotate it freehand, or the other way that you could do it is rotating by reference. So rotate again, and the keyboard shortcut for rotate is RO. So again, select your base point, and then down here you can see reference. You can also do copy. So what it'll do is it'll leave this one and then rotate a copy of it, which I have never had a need for, but it is there if you ever needed it. Reference, so that allows you to rotate it by a certain reference point. So for example, before it was projecting backwards and it was rotating opposite. A little more confusing in my opinion. So you rotate by reference, select your first point, your second point, and then when you don't have ortho on, it now goes the same direction using the base point that you selected. Rotates in the same direction. And that is rotating by reference. Next thing we're going to talk about is scale. So, just to illustrate it a little bit better, there's a rectangle. And then this is the scale button right here. Select your object, select your base point, and then you can drag as much, or you can type in the number. If you want it 12 times larger. Also, the keyboard shortcut is SC. Again, select your object, select that. You could also do smaller than 1. So, for example, if you're converting it from feet to inches, you could do 1/12, and now it is 1/12 the size. And similar to rotate, you can also do scale by reference. So select your base point, type in R for reference, select that, your first point, select your second reference point, and then you can drag as much as you want instead of having the weird scale drag that they by default do, such as this. It has, I believe it's going from the midpoint, but doesn't really tell you, and I'm kind of unsure too. So, scaling by reference, I personally find better. I use it a lot more often. Okay, the next thing is align. So this is the align button. Select your objects, select first source point, select second source point. AL on the keyboard is align. So I'll select my objects. So I do not often use align. So my apologies. Align is good if you have like an image or a PDF or something and you're trying to scale up to an object that you already have. So I'll type in align. So I'll select my object. So I'm just going to select this object. So really quick, what I'm going to do just to demonstrate it. So I'm going to align this edge with this edge. So I select my object, specify first source point, and I'm going to align it with the same exact points. And then I'll select my second source point and my second destination point, and then hit enter. Scale objects based on alignment points. In this case, I'm going to do no. So it aligned that, but you can also do, if you're using like a PDF or an image, you can scale it up to make it match the current scale. And then we'll hit yes. And as you can see, it scaled it up so that it is the same size. So that is align. And then next thing we'll talk about is mirror. So mirror is right here in the ribbon. And then I typically just do MIR for mirror. So you select your objects and then hit enter, and then you have to specify a mirror line. It's just an imaginary line that you use to mirror it, or that's like the reference point. So I selected this first point and that second point, and you can see that it highlighted object is your source object. This is your copied mirrored object. And then it asks you if you want to erase your source object. In this case, I'll select no. And you do not need a center line for mirroring them. So in this case, I will select my objects and do that. And no. And there you go. That is mirroring. So the next one is stretch. This is stretch. So I have something like that. Whoops. So I'll do a 2-point circle in between, and I'll trim that off. So I'll select stretch. So when I just created this generic object just to demonstrate, but I select stretch, select my objects, select a base point, and then just drag to where I want it to be. And you can make it smaller, stretch it in the opposite direction, stretch it however you would like. You can do it to the sides, and that is stretch. And then edit polyline. So this button right here is edit polyline, or PE in your keyboard will bring it up same way. So you can select your object, and then it brings up all of these options: close, join, width, edit vertex, fit, spline, decurve, line type generation, reverse, and undo. So close, obviously, if you selected multiple, then you can close all of those polylines. Join will allow you to join multiple polylines together. Width, obviously, you could change the width of the polyline. Edit vertex, demonstrate that one. So that just allows you to add a point to that polyline, or do many other things, and I can go into more detail if you would like. And then fit. Fit just creates an arc within that length. Spline makes it a spline. Decurve takes away all the curves to it. Line type generation. You turn that on, it keeps the line type going around the corner. And then reverse just reverses the polyline. It doesn't get shown, it's hard to show, but sometimes if you were to try to fillet something, and if you drew the polyline the wrong way, then it will mess up the fillet. It'll try to fillet from the opposite side than what you're actually trying to fillet. So then sometimes you'll have to go into polyline edit, or edit polyline, and reverse the polyline so that it'll fillet from the correct side that you're trying to fillet. And that is polyline edit. And you can also convert lines to polylines. I did forget about that, or arcs. Anything that's not, any object that's not a circle can be converted to a polyline using the polyline edit. So you type in PE, select the object, and it'll ask you, do you want to turn it into 1? Yes. Then if you just hit enter, you can now see that it is a polyline. And that is the polyline edit command and week 7 outline.